Welcome, Ed.
Glad to be here.
So, did you end up becoming a tour guide?
Well, I've always been really interested in history since I can remember.
Okay.
And I live in the Washington area in Alexandria, Virginia. And I had published some books on history, politics, humor. And I often would walk around the White House area in the President's Park, which is
Mm,
not, Lafayette Square. And I started to learn some of the background, some of the back history of Lafayette Square. And there were astounding number of bad incidents that occurred there, like an attempt to kill President Lincoln's Secretary of State. There was an assassination attempt, almost successful, on President Truman,
okay.
the son of the America's author of the national anthem. He was murdered in Lafayette Square by a congressman
Okay.
way back in the 1850s. So I'm starting to think, well, you could write a good article about this, which I did. Then I thought you could write a whole book about this, which I eventually did. But after starting my side hustle, which was
Okay.
to give tours of scandal, assassination, and intrigue in President's Park, right next to the White House, one of the most
Wow.
historic sites in the world.
Yeah.
I said this could be a pretty good business, and I was surprised that really nobody else was doing it.
Really?
There had been a so-called scandal bus tour
Okay.
in Washington D.C. years before, where the bus would go to places like the Watergate Hotel of the Watergate scandal, Richard Nixon fame,
Right.
or it would go over to the tidal basin where a prominent member of Congress, drunk one night with his lady of the evening, had dove into the tidal basin, the little lake next to the Jefferson Memorial in D.C.,
Okay.
another famous site,
Yes.
and that was a big scandal. So the bus would go across town, showing all these infamous sites. But I had a gold mine. I had a small park, easy 90-minute walk, where I could tell stories about all these terrible misdeeds.
Okay.
It turned into my side hustle, and then I went from there, and I started collecting similar stories to other historic spots in the nation's capital, like in Georgetown or the Capitol building grounds, and went from there. And actually, those flagship tours, most of them, three of them now, have turned into books from history publishers.
Oh,
And I'm
fun.
working on a fourth one now, hopefully for Georgetown. I have another one, a murder mystery set in Alexandria, Virginia, just downriver from Washington, D.C. It's the hometown of George Washington and other famous figures. And the novel draws upon some of the sordid deeds in the past, as well as positive things.
So, in addition to getting the revenue from the tours, you've got the opportunity to get people really interested in and then end up buying a book.
Yeah, it's a really good. They play off each other.
Yes.
So a tour then the books sort of write themselves because my tours are very different from most cookie cutter tours in a big city, a big tourist city like DC. Or I was recently in Istanbul, Turkey. I've been to Toronto, and typically you'll get on a bus, get in the van, and you'll go to the really big sites. If you're in Paris, you'll see the Eiffel Tower,
Right.
you'll see Napoleon's tomb, and so forth, and maybe spend 15 minutes at each spot, take some photos, and move on. With
Okay.
my tours, they're much more detailed and for the aficionado of history or politics. And so I'll tell a story that might go on for 10 minutes, and I might tell 12 of those stories or 10 of those stories in the course of 90 minutes or 2 hours.
Right.
So they're detailed and they drill down into the subject matter. That gives me my unique pitch,
Right.
unique business.
Yeah, very unique niche there. And also, hats off to you for the marketing piece of it too. It's just not a tour of historic sites, but you were focusing on the scandals that occurred.
That's right. And to fully answer your previous question, the books and the tours feed off each other. Once I have a tour in place, I might have 20, 25 stories, good stories to catch the guest's attention, and I can turn those into books fairly
Right.
easily.
Yeah.
And then the publications of the books, the marketing and the promotion of the books will spotlight the tours and vice versa. Whenever I give a tour, I hold up my books and I give the links to the books and the social media and whatnot. So it's a good interchange between the two side businesses, two side hustles,
Right.
giving tours and books about those tours, if you will.
The tours would give you good feedback too on what people are interested in, what stories really land. and give you practice in delivering them, tweaking them, like how you're presenting them?
Absolutely. Just the other night, I gave my first espionage tour, spy tour of the White House area.
Oh, cool.
I often will tell spy tours, but this was a focused entirely, almost entirely on espionage. And for the final tour, we were running out of time. It was getting dark. And so I turned to my guests who were from around the world, from Germany and other countries. And I said to them, what would you like to hear for the final story? Would you like to hear about a presidential assassination? About the story about the death of the son of the Star Spangled Banner author? Would you like to hear about the most unique house in America? And so forth. And so they took their pick. And I get good feedback. I can tell from people's reactions what the most favorable stories are. I
Yeah.
tend to get people who like gory stories.
Really?
But I use the tours to tell the general history of a locale, as well as achievements and accomplishments, famous statesmen, admired women, as well as the bad stuff.
Right.
But they're coming to a scandal tour. They usually want to hear about the bad stuff even more.
Right.
So in that particular case, that's what we finished with.
So does that give you a clue to include that in your books as well?
Yes, I'll when I get good reactions like that, I'll make a note to do a chapter on those particular episodes, those stories.
Right. Yeah. Well, you've partially answered this already, but how do you advertise and market your tours?
I found that the meetup has been a great tool, my most effective tool. I use two meetups. One is the Lafayette Square tour of scandal, assassination, and intrigue. That was my flagship tour. And I use that as the general marketer for all the tours. And I have a sort of a clone tour called Washington Area Discovery Hikes, which I took over from someone else when they left Meetup. And it had a large clientele base, and several thousand people. So I was able to take that and basically clone my other tour and reach many more people.
Nice.
So Meetup's been very good in terms of income, getting people who pay for the tour in advance, which is another thing I can get to. I found that Eventbrite has been the best. Of course, it has worldwide marketing, of course, its
Yes.
websites, and most people who pay for my tour, they do it they do it through Eventbrite. I found that having people pre-register and prepay is obviously a good way to guarantee the income.
Hmm.
I went through some experiences early on. I've been doing these tours for 11 years now. In early times, I would have a lot of people sign up through Meetup, but then very few people would show up
Right.
and and pay. So the Eventbrite is a way to get them in for sure, and to give me a good idea of how many people will actually come to a tour.
Do you
Another
do you have
app that
before we
I've been
leave
using,
before we
yeah,
leave Eventbrite, do you know how people are finding you on in Eventbrite? Like are they travelers who would normally look to Eventbrite to see what's happening in the area, or something else that you're involved in leading them there?
that's a very good question. That's what I've wondered about. And
Okay.
I try to ask people, I try to ask the guests on the tour, how did you find me? And some say it really varies. They'll say, I saw you on Twitter, I saw you on Eventbrite, I saw you on your Facebook business pages. I've been on previous tours of yours, and I like that one to come to another. I also I saw your e-blast where I sent news about the next tour to my large list of people, my clientele. And another app I use that people will mention less frequently is Airbnb, not lodging, but Airbnb experiences. That's their travel app
Right.
where
Okay.
you can find fun things to do in the city where you're residing.
Right.
So
I
I
think I
use that.
signed up for those, one of those
Yeah.
now that you mentioned it. Yeah.
And these various apps will have different fees. Some are have steeper fees than others. Some are quite steep. They'll take 25% cut. And that's
Mm,
a factor in the cost of your tour, because you
sure.
might take their cut and add it onto your price, which is unfortunate. But the trade-off is you get worldwide promotion and marketing on these sites. So you'll get people from around the
Yeah.
world come to you when they're visiting DC to go into your events.
Right. And they're charging you for that for sure.
I have a Facebook business page for each of my books, and there are many books. I have 14 now. And for
14?
the two, yeah, I have 14 books published, co-written, written,
Yeah.
edited. I've used Facebook ads, and I spent a fair amount of money on them. And they were cheap and they seemed to reach a lot of people per dollar. but I found that I got very few people actually come to my tours based on those ads. So I've stopped doing that, and I've done a lot more just posting on the different sites about my ads.
Right.
I'm still looking for an effective way to pay for ads and good bang for the buck.
Okay. Well, maybe you can speak to what your, let's see, how much you charge for the tours, and then give us an idea of the revenue that you're generating from them.
Right. This is a side hustle. So
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
I, I have several jobs. This is a side hustle, and the what I'll do is I'll typically it's an inexpensive tour. It's good bang for the guest buck. I might charge $20 or $25 for up to 2 hours or 3 hours of a tour. I might, if I'm lucky, I'll get up to 50 people on a tour. Usually it's considerably less than that. So in terms of cost, this is cheap compared to most private tours
Yes.
that you get in a big city like this. It's more typical to charge, say, $50, $75 a person, such a thing. I've tried to vary the price point over the 11 years I've been giving the tour. And it seems like $25 or so is right for me. So, and then but I've been doing more and more specialty small group tours where someone liked the tour and they said, "Oh, I have a family coming in for Thanksgiving. I have a family coming in over the summer to visit Washington. And I think your tour would be a great perk for them, a really special treat. Like for my grandfather's birthday, let's do a history tour. He's a military veteran. Let's go give him a history tour." And so I'll charge something like $250 for a small group tour,
Hmm.
say 90 minutes or so. And it might be a walking tour, it might be a shuttle bus or a tour bus, depending on the size and the on what the people want to do, whether they want to walk or take an excursion around town.
Great. And
So
you've
it's
got a depth of knowledge there enough that you can really customize it to the time of year, like you were saying, Thanksgiving, or to the interests of the group, like you said, the veteran. Yeah.
yeah, I love that's one thing I love about the tours, along with my flagship tours outside the White House, Capitol building grounds, Georgetown, Old Town Alexandria, and about a dozen others that I give regularly.
Hmm.
I love crafting new tours, specialty tours. Like I had a women's group ask me for a women's history tour of Lafayette Square. So that was a blast. I
Okay.
took them to Constitutional Hall. I showed them where a female black opera singer broke the color code back in the 1930s by singing there. I brought them to the Red Cross headquarters and told the story of Clara Barton, her service in the Civil War, and going to the San Francisco earthquake and the Galveston flood and helping all the people hurt by those disasters. So
Oh, man.
that was a lot of fun to put together, and especially tour like that. I'll do it on any topic. I'll do it with foreign visitors.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're it's sort of the classic monetizing a passion, because it sounds like this is something that you would be studying and researching and getting involved in anyway because of your interest in it, and you found a way to monetize it.
To use the current cliche, 1,000%. The often you're asked, what advice do you give to people who want to set up their own business? And it's for me, it's totally this is my passion. Since I can remember, I've loved history, and I read books about it all the time. And I go traveling really around the world, visit historical sites. One of my dreams is to visit all the ancient civilizations. I've
Right.
been to Egypt, I've been to Turkey, to the Far East, Angkor Wat in Cambodia,
Hmm.
and I can do that. I can do a modern civilization, America, that young country. It's some of its most historic sites and give tours of that. So that's really my passion. Also, the other thing is I love explaining. I love talking in public and communicating the passion to people. And in fact, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do way back, I found that what I wanted to do was on a history subject, learn about it, and then turn it around and explain it to a general audience in a fun way. So I really found what I wanted to do, what my passion was, and then make a side hustle out of it.
Nice. And that really deepens your learning too, because I was taught early on that you don't really understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand it. So you learn about all these
Absolutely.
things and then you've got to process it. So did I hear you right? Are you providing these tours in other countries then?
Well, I'll tell you an anecdote. I took a trip to Turkey 2 weeks ago, and there's a historic site there called Ephesus. It's sort of the Vesuvius or Pompeii of Turkey,
Hmm.
ancient Roman city that fell into seed and was excavated over the last century. It stretches for about 2 miles. It's a restored, excavated ancient Roman city.
Yeah.
Fantastic site, Ephesus. And as I was touring it, and I know a lot about the ancient Roman history and a fair amount about the Byzantines who also settled in that spot and about the Turkish sultans who conquered the area. So as I was entering the site, I came upon a Chinese group whose English was good, but they knew nothing about ancient Rome. So I started explaining some of the sites, like the site of Cleopatra's sister, who had been murdered by the Romans and then
Okay.
buried. Actually, her burial site is in Ephesus. I was explaining this and other things, and they obviously were interested. Didn't know anything about this,
Right.
so I just kept going from one site to another, and then reading the historical plaques, which were in English as well as Turkish, and riffing off them and off of my own knowledge. And before I knew it, had given a 2 hour tour to a group of foreigners in a foreign country.
Did they
So
compensate you?
the compensation was that they loved it, and
Yeah.
I got to give my first foreign tour.
Nice.
And I got an idea for another side hustle, which is to advertise to become a tour guide for people who want to take history tours of other countries, say in Europe or in the Near East.
Right.
Good work. I've
Yes.
had some feelers on that before, so who knows what that'll turn into.
Hmm.
Make it a global company.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, no, we're obviously not a tax show here, but given your work, and I know the rules are going to vary in all the countries, but I would suspect that some of those international tours that international travel that you do would be in part an expense to be written off.
And expense and further paperwork. Because if you're running your own business, of course, April 15th it takes a lot of hours, and there are a whole set of rules for foreign income.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
but
No, I
hopefully
meant,
more than.
yeah, I meant in terms of if you're going there, part of your travel cost, because this is research that's helping you
Mhm.
do your craft. You're getting ideas when you're there, right?
The best tax
Yeah.
deductions you can take, giving tours both foreign or domestic.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
And
all the
so,
expenses that are associated with that. Yeah,
yeah. So what do your earnings look like from the tours then?
earnings are modest,
Okay.
on the order of, this is a part time gig. It
Hmm.
might be
For
on the order
sure.
of, let's say 15,000, 20,000 a year, but quite modest. That's quite low for a professional tour guide full time. Uh, I belong to tour guide associations, and a lot of my friends and associates, they'll make six figures, well into the six figures, by working every day, 8, 10 hours a day, along with giving, to use the expression, cookie cutter tours, where typically they'll take people to the main sites,
Right.
like the Lincoln Memorial and the
Hmm.
Capitol building, and
Right.
give a brief overview. But that's where the real money is in the business.
Okay.
That's where the great mass of people come, and that's what they want to see.
Right.
Their time is limited. They want to see the highlights quickly. But those folks who do it full time professionally, they'll also have side gigs where they'll do specialty group tours, small group tours, and that'll be extra income from them for
Right.
them.
Yeah. And in your
Mhm.
case too, you've got the additional revenue stream of the book sales, a lot of
Correct.
which you can't necessarily, well, yeah, you can't necessarily track because if they're turning around and ordering it from, say, Amazon, yes, you're going to get the commission check, but you really don't know what source that sale came from.
Right. So
Yeah.
you have to, it's nice to have multiple streams of income.
It sure is.
And it's the
S-
sort of thing where a lot of people who are trying to find what they really want to do, what their passion is, uh, my advice is often that, you can have a day job and
Mhm.
then do your passion at night on the
Right.
side, and then see where it takes you. It might become your full-time job. Hopefully it will.
Right.
But there's plenty of people who never really turn it into full-time, but they get great satisfaction out of it, even from a limited number of hours.
Right. Yeah, good point. So how often do you do tours?
I try to do one about once a week, and it takes a lot of preparation to give a tour, both in putting the tours together, the research, and also the marketing and promotion, and getting there, getting to the tour, and going back home. You try to factor that into your expense and to the fee that you charge, the
Right.
hours of commuting back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better term, commuting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so usually about once a week, and I try to do it year round. And I usually do walking tours, and so people get exercise as well as hopefully they learn something. Even in winter,
I was going to
in
ask you
Washington
about that.
D.C.
I just pictured all this snow there.
Well, Washington D.C. is in the near south, so it's fairly mild winters.
Okay.
It rarely drops below freezing. And if you bundle up, we can usually walk around even in January and February. But also in the wintertime, I'll take some of the tours inside. And I have a great resource there, a free resource called the Smithsonian
Mm,
Museums, and I'll give tours of the National Gallery of Art or the National Portrait Gallery, which is a terrific mini history museum, really, along with art.
right.
So I'll sometimes take the tours indoors in the winter.
Great. Well, you mentioned, I mean, obviously these larger platforms are taking cut of the tour fee. How does it work with Meetup?
Meetup is free for anyone to join a
Hmm.
meetup, like a travel group, a tourism group, Lafayette Square Tours of Scandal. That's free to join. For the operator of the tour, like me, you pay a very modest monthly or annual fee on the order of, I don't know, $15 a month to operate the tour, which you quickly make back. So it's very inexpensive, and it gives you nationwide, worldwide exposure whenever you post a tour.
Right.
And they're on all the social, they're in all the social media, Instagram and whatnot. And so you
Oh, and
can
like you said, they don't act, they're not processing any payments. So
they're
that,
not, but what you
okay,
do is what I do is I list 3 or 4 ways in which they can a guest can pay me. They can do it through PayPal or through Eventbrite, Airbnb experiences or whatnot. I give them a
got it.
choice,
Yeah,
and
right,
if they're smart, they won't choose the ones that pay the where you have to pay the hefty fee, the hefty percentage.
right. Yes. I'm involved in many meetup groups locally here for
Mhm.
various sports activities, but I haven't yet used it when I'm traveling. I'm going to do that next though.
I'm looking at you're allowed up to 3 meetup groups to operate.
Mm,
So I have my 2 tour groups, but I'm looking at a related. I'm trying to get into a related meetup, namely travel, where I wouldn't give a tour, but I would bring a group of people to a fun place to visit, particularly in the Mid-Atlantic region, or maybe side trips up to Canada, Quebec City, or Boston, Mass, and whatnot. So I'm looking for a meetup to run that as well, and that will be my third, which is a limit.
oh, I
You're
see.
not allowed to do more than 3,
Ah,
unfortunately.
okay. This is I was referring to being like a participant. I don't run any.
Mhm.
I just go for the fun. And
All right.
those are
Well,
unlimited as far as I know.
I'm in a number of sports groups myself, but none that I manage or go on meetup for.
Right. That's just
Yeah.
pure fun time. Yeah. So what do some of the commission rates look like? You mentioned what was a Airbnb?
Airbnb is stiff. It's
Yeah,
like 25%. So if you're charging $20 for a tour, $25. That's a lot.
it is.
What a business that is to take a cut like that, make $5 for every guest for every tour, for thousands and thousands of tours. So it's a great business model for them. Not so good for the guests who have to absorb that expense.
And the guests on the other side have to pay Airbnb as well. So they're getting it
Right,
twice. Yeah.
right. And then, but it is a worldwide company, and it does give you exposure, and it gives you guests that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yes.
Eventbrite is PayPal is the least expensive. It's like a dollar, say, for a $20 fee. They might get a dollar. Meetup, let's see, Eventbrite is more in the middle. I usually charge like $23 to make up for their fee, sort of in between the PayPal and the Airbnb experience.
So as a potential participant in your tour group, if I check those three links, I might see three different price points?
That's right. And I've wondered whether I should just spell it out for people,
Mm,
but so far I've been letting them explore that, and
right.
they usually pick PayPal.
Okay.
It's the cheapest, or and rarely they'll pay in cash at the
Mhm.
start of the tour.
Yeah.
But it's difficult for me to track how many people I'm going to get. I actually gave one tour once where nobody showed up except a friend of mine. He said, "Well, Ed, why don't we just do it some other day?" And but that can happen, especially when you're starting your side hustle. You have very few guests show up,
Yes.
make very little money. The good side of that was that I would give a lot of tours, maybe for not much income, but I got much better at what I did. I became a much better storyteller. And people tell me all the time now that, oh, you're such a great storyteller. And that's really helped my book writing too, because I
Yes.
my books consist of telling stories about these historical events.
It helps your reputation as well because you gain the reputation for somebody that's going to show up. Like if I was a visitor and only had 3 days in Washington D.C. and I booked this tour and it was going to be the highlight for me, and suddenly you cancel it, it's like, well, doing it next week isn't going to help me. I'm not going to be here. So good for you for doing that. And looking at on the positive side, you get to practice, you get, and that, that one or two people that maybe you're doing that tour for down the road lead to something else. They refer you to a larger group that friends or relatives or colleagues that are coming into town. You never know where it's going to lead. So to me,
You never know.
that's
You
a
never
big
know.
integrity piece. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another link which is helpful is the TripAdvisor company. I'm proud that I have the highest rated tours on TripAdvisor for the Middle Atlantic, like 75 reviews or more.
Okay.
And so it's good. That's a nice feather in my cap. Although TripAdvisor is not good for locating the tour or for contacting me. It's more like a publicity or promotional tool. But the a guest who's interested, when he sees the TripAdvisor reviews and wants to book a tour, it's not that easy for them to contact me or to book the tour. Unlike Eventbrite,
So if I'm on the TripAdvisor site and I'm reading about your tour, is there
yeah,
not a place where I can click and purchase and book?
there is, but you have to go through. You really have to look in the site.
Okay. It's not
It's not
user
like a
friendly.
meetup where I can list one tour after the other and give the locale, the date, the time. That's not how TripAdvisor works. It's a review site.
Right.
It's where you review the tour in general, not where you find out about each particular tour and when it's scheduled.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely found your presence on there because it appears that you've earned a TripAdvisor Traveler's Choice Award for 2023.
right. That was very nice to get.
What does that entail?
When you have a very high ratings, and I actually checked at one point. I looked at the rating for my tours. I have 92 reviews now. My goal is to get to 100 reviews, and out of five, I'm like 4.9899. And I actually checked. I looked up the Great Wall of China, the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building, all the big tour sites around the world, and my tours beat them.
Mm.
The only sites that beat me in terms of review rating are natural wonders like the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone. And I bow to them. They're better than me. But I have it on the Eiffel Tower thus far.
All right. But I guess your real competition is other tour operators in your
Yes.
particular location.
And technology runs into that because I give sort of an old fashioned walking tour,
Okay.
but now scooters have become the thing where
Mm.
the operator will take people on scooters with headphones and he'll explain the venues as they scoot along without any exertion. And that's preferable for a lot of people who don't want to take walk around for an hour and a half. But other people would love to get out in the outdoors and get some exercise as well as learning about the sites.
For sure. Yeah, it would definitely be one of those.
Also growing in popularity are shuttle tours, not the big tour buses, but vans, where you might get 10 people in the van, a small group tour,
Right.
and they'll take you around the different sites, and then the guide will explain in some detail what you're seeing.
Is that something you would contemplate for the future?
Maybe down the road, maybe I've done some bicycle tours, and there's both. You can do motorized bicycles or
Hmm.
just traditional bicycles. I like like you, I think I'm interested in sports. I like playing sports a lot, so I'm given to walking or bicycling as
Yes.
opposed to the motorized activities or tour buses. But down the road, I might do that more.
The last tour I signed up for was of vineyards in Napa Valley, California,
Oh,
and
nice.
Sonoma. And well, the issue was I was going down with a girlfriend for our Canadian Thanksgiving, and we wanted to do the wine tours, but because both of us wanted to partake in those tours, the question of, okay, who's going to be the designated driver? And then I found this bicycle tour with electrical bikes and thought, okay, that's it. That's our answer.
I guess that's it, or it could be even more dangerous.
No, we behaved. It was fun. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was good. But I'm trying to remember where I found that one on. It might have been TripAdvisor. And then chances are I probably looked up the website of the company and did my own research. You said you didn't have a website, did you?
Not traditionally. I used to have a website, but I got very few hits from it. So I just go with the free Facebook business pages, which I don't
Right.
get many hits on either. But the Meetup, and Eventbrite Experience and PayPal have really been good for me.
Some of
Meetup
your,
especially.
yeah. What are some tips for getting noticed and ranking well on TripAdvisor?
Well, get to have a very good business. Give good tours, and then people will give you 5-star reviews. I always, at the end of a tour, if it goes well, and it usually goes well, I make a small announcement. If you like the tour, please review me on TripAdvisor. I might give them out a business card, and then I'll add that if you didn't like the tour, please don't review me. That's a way to keep the ratings up
Yeah.
on Trip, and you can use TripAdvisor as a promo tool. Go on to Twitter or wherever and say, here are my tours from TripAdvisor. If you're in town in DC, check us
Right.
out.
Nice. So you actively ask for those reviews.
I do, and on
Yeah.
Airbnb as well. And Airbnb is the place where my tours haven't been they've been rated very highly on most of my tours, but on some not, because of that problem with finding me
Right.
at the last minute. And
Yeah.
some people have gotten irked and given me a negative review. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's too bad. We kind of talked about the income part, and somebody really has to decide, I think, how much they want to invest in time and energy to develop this, because so much of it is going to have to do with the marketing and the location. And I was wondering if you're able to offer any tips in starting or growing a tour guide business,
Mm.
or the biggest obstacles that you've run into.
Yeah, one thing that starting a tour guide business is to find out with your niche is, what your specialty is. Most tour guides will go with the big generic tours of very famous sites. Like if you're in Paris, if you're in a tour bus, you'll go
Right.
from the Eiffel Tower to the Napoleon's tomb to the bank of the Seine, which has all the restaurants. And that's a very good way to make a living as a tour guide. In my case, my niche was specialty history tours. So I go to the most historic sites instead of to all of them, and I focus on incidents, famous episodes or infamous incidents at those historic sites like the Capitol building grounds or Georgetown. Georgetown is among other things, along with being a beautiful colonial village, Georgetown in Washington is the center of espionage in the world, because it's in Georgetown where most of the foreign embassies are.
Right.
And each embassy has a contingent of spies in it to collect military and economic and technical information.
Yeah.
So you have a wealth of spy stories in Georgetown. You can easily make a tour out of that if you want that to be your specialty.
Great.
Uh,
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
Halloween is
Great.
coming up, and that's actually a very good part of the year for me, because my tours fit easily into Halloween tours, because they often deal with gory or morbid stories, murders and duels to the death and scandals and the like. And so I give real life Halloween stories,
Oh,
not made up
fun.
ghost stories.
Do you find yourself tweaking your, not the stories, but focusing on certain stories given the time of year, or what holidays happening? Like the
Absolutely.
customization you just mentioned about Halloween.
Right. Halloween is a natural fit for morbid, bloody stories.
Right.
Uh, but then I'll pivot around Christmas season. I'll give positive stories. I might give a tour of the heroes and heroines of Lafayette Square, like Clara Barton, for example. On July 4th, I'll do a Thomas Jefferson tour, the wildlife and times of Thomas Jefferson, from his memorial up to the White House, uh, and tell
Yeah.
episodes from his life.
So tell us about one of your most memorable incidents on tour.
I was giving a tour at the Capitol building grounds, and I wasn't feeling well. I had like upset stomach, and I was giving a tour. It was a small group tour to a group of nurses who were in town for a nursing association meeting, and not a bad tour for a man to give a bunch of nurses. And I started to feel very, very sick at the foot of the Capitol building, and I actually fainted. I blacked out
Wow.
for a minute or so, and I was flat on my back. I looked up and I saw these six nurses, these six heavenly angelic figures looking down at me, but with great concern.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were nurses. They took my pulse. They had a blood pressure monitor with them, machine with them. I had very low blood pressure. And I heard one of them say, I think he's having a heart attack.
Oh man.
And they called EMS, and the ambulance whisked me off to the world famous George Washington University gun clinic, where Ronald Reagan was taken after he was shot as president, and where a lot of the gangbangers or people who were shot or knifed,
Of course you would know the history of it.
presidential assassinations, of course. On the way there, I had some Gatorade. One of the EMS personnel gave me some Gatorade. I really started feeling better. Turned out I was dehydrated and had indigestion, but they brought me in to this world famous center for like gunshot wounds, and I was placed next to two men. One of them pulled out his cell phone, called his girlfriend, and started talking about how they had cocaine the previous night, and he had had an overdose, and I was in the hospital. And then the person to my left, doctor came in and said, "Have you been doing drugs?" The man denied it, and the doctor said, "Well, your blood tests say the opposite." So here, here I was in with a ward of drug addicts. Hours went by for the negative test to come back. I got I got impatient, and during COVID, I got up and started wandering around the hospital where I found doctors pushing a man on a table into surgery,
Okay, right?
and sticking out of his back was a knife.
Wow.
He was one of the victims of violence in town. And I said to myself, I'm going back to my hospital bed. I'm going to behave myself and wait for the results to come back. So that was the worst experience I've had on the tour, but it gave me a good anecdote to tell ever after.
Just one more story to add to your repertoire.
And it was related to my topic because it was the place where President Reagan was taken and other high-profile people. If they have medical problems, they'll be rushed there for emergency treatment.
Right. Way to look at the silver lining there, Ed.
There you go.
So what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Ed?
The best way is through the meetup, the flagship tour, Lafayette Square Tours of Scandal. And you can also check out my books. Just to mention one, a book that came out of the Lafayette Square tours is called The White House's Unruly Neighborhood.
Okay.
And it's a history of scandal and mayhem in the White House area.
Nice. And we'll sure to include those links in the show notes.
Very good.
So what's your best tip, Ed, to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle dream?
Well, it's a cliche, but if you follow your passion, if you find out what you love, and maybe and try to marry it with your aptitudes, with your talents, and if you combine that and really go for it, even if you don't succeed to make a fortune or even find a full-time job with that, it'll be worth the experience. You'll learn a lot from that to apply it to wherever you go in your work journey.
Well, thank you so much for that. And thank you for sharing what's involved in starting and growing a tour guide business and for being today's side hustle hero.
Well, thank you for your great questions. It's been a pleasure.
You heard Ed mention that he often asks his customers, where did you hear about the tour? It's such an important question for us to ask our customers. Where did you hear about us? How did you find us? In one of my businesses, I actually had that question embedded in the application contract form so that every staff member was prompted to ask. I didn't want to make spending decisions based on my assumptions, but rather wanted to know for sure what was truly working. How were people finding out about my business? And it's confession time. As I'm writing this piece, I realize that I've not been doing a good job in asking you, my treasured podcast listener, viewer, how did you hear about Side Hustle Hero? How is it that you became a listener, a viewer? I'd honestly, truly love to know. If you're into it, please get in touch and tell me. There's so many potential touch points through podcast platforms and social media and emails, word of mouth, and I totally don't want to make assumptions. So I hope to hear from you. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find the links Ed mentioned and the full show notes on our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, let me know you're listening and tell me how this podcast is helping you. And tell me how you found us. You can send a DM on Instagram at Joan Posavy or shoot me an email to hello@joanposavy.com. Thanks for listening and hustle on.